Yuna stood at the observation window of Harmony 7, watching ships from 100 different worlds drift past like fireflies in the darkness. She had been living on the massive space station for 3 years now, ever since humanity had joined the Galactic Council. At 24 years old, she was one of the youngest xenobiologists in human history, and she believed with every fiber of her being that different species could learn to understand each other. Her father, Ambassador Hyan, did not share her optimism. He stood behind her now, his reflection visible in the transparent metal of the window. His face looked older than it had when they first arrived. The political games of the council had aged him. "You should not volunteer for this," Hyan said quietly. "The Vrix are not like the other species. They do not respect weakness, and they see kindness as weakness." Yuna turned to face her father. She was small compared to most humans, barely reaching his shoulder, but her eyes held a determination that made her seem much larger. "Someone has to show them we are not afraid. If we keep backing down, they will never accept us as equals." The Vrix had been the loudest voices against humanity's inclusion in the council. They were an insectoid species, tall and covered in black chitin that gleamed like polished metal. Their leader, Hive Prince Vexthral, called humans soft flesh and temporary species in every council meeting. He had proposed that humans undergo a trial of worth to prove they deserved their place among the galactic civilizations. Most species had opposed the idea. The Dalthri, a peaceful aquatic race, had spoken eloquently against it. Even the militant Kryn thought it was unnecessary. But the Vrix had allies, and they had pushed and pushed until the council agreed to allow volunteers. Yuna had raised her hand immediately. Now, standing in her quarters with her father, she wondered if she had made a mistake. Not because she was afraid, but because of the pain in her father's eyes. "I taught you to be brave," Hyan said, "but I never taught you to be reckless. There is a difference, Yuna." "I know the difference," she replied. "This is not reckless. This is necessary." In orbit around Harmony 7, Commander Taiyang sat in the command chair of the HSS Retribution. His ship was small compared to the massive vessels of other species, but it was fast and well-armed. He had been ordered to escort the human diplomatic mission, and for 3 years he had watched and waited. On his personal console, a message blinked. It was encrypted with Earth Command's highest security protocols. Taiyang opened it and read the single line of text: "Observe and prepare." He closed the message and looked at his crew. They were young, most of them. They had joined the space service believing they would explore the stars and make friends with aliens. Instead, they had spent 3 years being insulted and dismissed by species that saw humanity as newcomers, and PRIMITIVES.TAEYAG knew something they did not. He knew that Earth had not been idle during these 3 years. He knew about the secret shipyards and the hidden fleets. He knew that humanity had been preparing for the possibility that the galaxy would not accept them peacefully. He hoped that preparation would not be necessary. But he was ready if it was. Back on Harmony 7, Yuna walked through the diplomatic quarter toward the Vrix section. Her best friend Nari walked beside her, trying to hide her worry. "You do not have to do this," Nari said for the 100th time. "Let someone else volunteer. Let one of the soldiers do it." "That would prove their point," Yuna said. "They already think we are a violent species because of our history. If we send a soldier, they will say we only understand force. I am a scientist. I study life and cooperation. I am the right choice." Nari grabbed her arm, stopping her in the middle of the corridor. "What if they hurt you?" Yuna smiled, though it did not reach her eyes. "The council will not allow it. This is a test of endurance and courage, not a torture session. They have rules." What Yuna did not know was that the Vrix had very different ideas about what the trial should involve. What she did not know was that Vix Thrall had spent weeks planning exactly how to break the human spirit. What she did not know was that the Council's rules were written by species that had never met anyone as cruel as the Vrix. The trial was scheduled for the next day. That evening, Una sat in her quarters and recorded a message for her mother back on Earth. She talked about the beautiful nebula visible from her window. She talked about the new friends she had made among the Dalthari researchers. She talked about everything except the trial dot at the end of the message. She paused. Then she added, "I love you, Mom. Tell everyone back home that I am making them proud." On the Retribution, Jiwan reviewed Yuna's medical files. As the ship's medical officer, she had been tasked with monitoring the volunteers' vital signs during the trial. She had set up remote sensors that would track everything from heart rate to neural activity. She did not like what she was seeing in the Vrix trial protocols. They were vague, full of phrases like stress tolerance assessment and pain threshold evaluation. She had requested clarification from the Council Medical Board, but they had told her not to worry. Jiwan worried anyway. That night, Una could not sleep. She lay in her bed and thought about all the reasons she had volunteered. She thought about the human colonies that needed the Council's protection. She thought about the trade agreements that could lift billions out of poverty. She thought about the future where humans and aliens worked together to explore the universe. She thought about her father's face. Just before dawn, station time, Ambassador Hyan came to her quarters. He did not knock. He used his diplomatic override code and walked in to find his daughter staring at the ceiling. "I cannot stop you," he said. "I have tried to use my position to cancel this, but the Council has ruled that you volunteered freely, and they will hold you to it." Una sat up. "I do not want you to stop it, Father." Hyan sat on the edge of her bed, something he had not done since she was a child. "Then I want you to know something. If they harm you, if they cross the line from testing to cruelty, there will be consequences. I have sent messages to Earth, important messages. Father, do not start a war over me." "I will not start anything," Hyan said, "but I will finish it if necessary." He kissed her forehead and left. Una got up and dressed in the simple white clothing the trial protocols required. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked small and fragile and very, very human. She walked to the trial chamber with her head high. Commander Taiyang received a second encrypted message at 6 o'clock hours. Authorization granted. Protocol Fury. He did not open the detailed orders yet. He would wait until he needed them. Instead, he watched his sensors as Una entered the Vrix testing facility. The trial was about to begin, and the galaxy was about to learn something about humanity. They just did not know it yet. The trial chamber was not what Una expected. She had imagined something clinical and official, with medical monitors and safety protocols. Instead, she found herself in a circular room with dark walls that seemed to absorb light. The floor was made of the same black metal as Vrix armor. In the center stood a platform with restraints. Vex Thrall waited for her, his mandibles clicking in what might have been laughter. Around the room's upper level, observation windows showed the faces of council members and diplomats. Una saw her father pressed against one window, his hands flat against the glass. "The soft flesh arrives," Vex Thrall said in the clicking, hissing language of his people. A translator device converted his words to human speech. "We shall see what humans are made of." Una walked to the platform without hesitation. She had studied Vrix culture for months. She knew that showing fear would make everything worse. The restraints closed around her wrists and ankles, holding her upright, but not painfully. "Not yet. The trial will test your endurance," Vex Thrall announced to the observers. "Your kind claims to be worthy of the council." We shall verify this claim. On the retribution, Ji-Wan watched her monitors with growing alarm. Yuna's heart rate was elevated but steady. Adrenaline levels were high, which was normal. But the readings from inside the chamber itself worried her. The atmospheric composition was changing. "Commander," she said to Taiyang, "they are introducing toxins into the air. Nothing lethal, but it will cause extreme discomfort." Taiyang's jaw tightened. "Is it within the trial protocols?" Ji-Wan checked her data. "Technically, yes, but barely." The first phase began with heat. The temperature in the chamber rose steadily. Yuna felt sweat break out across her skin. The white clothing she wore began to stick to her body. She focused on her breathing, keeping it slow and controlled. Vex Thrall circled her like a predator. "Your species evolved in moderate climates. You are fragile, weak. This is only the beginning." Yuna did not respond. She had decided before entering that she would not give him the satisfaction of hearing her complain. She would endure whatever came with dignity. The heat continued to rise. Her vision began to blur at the edges. She could hear Nari shouting something from the observation deck, but the words were distorted. The toxins in the air were affecting her nervous system now, making everything feel distant and strange. In the observation area, Ambassador Hyan tried to push past the council guards. "This is torture, not a trial. Stop this immediately." A council arbiter, a tall being made of what looked like living crystal, spoke in a calm voice. "The trial protocols were agreed upon. We cannot interfere with cultural practices." "Cultural practices?" Hyan's voice was raw. "You are watching them poison my daughter." "The toxin levels are within acceptable limits," the arbiter said. "We are monitoring carefully." But they were not monitoring carefully enough. On the retribution, Ji-Wan saw Yuna's neural readings spike. She is experiencing extreme pain. Her body is starting to shut down non-essential functions to survive. Commander Taiyang stood up from his chair. "Can we extract her?" "Not without violating the Council's non-interference directive," his first officer said. "If we beam her out, we will be expelled from the Council. Earth's entire diplomatic position will collapse." Taiyang looked at the message on his console. Protocol Fury. He had his orders, but they were conditional. He had to wait. He had to watch this young woman suffer and wait for the right moment. He hated every second of it. The second phase of the trial introduced extreme cold. The temperature plummeted so fast that Yuna gasped. The sweat on her skin froze. Her muscles locked up, cramping painfully. She bit down on her tongue to keep from crying out, tasting blood. Vex Thrall moved closer. "Your kind is so limited. You require such narrow conditions to survive. How did you ever imagine you could travel the stars?" Through the pain, Yuna managed to speak. Her voice was hoarse but clear. "We imagined it because we dared to dream. Something your kind forgot how to do." The Vrix prince's mandibles snapped together in anger. He had not expected defiance. He had expected begging and tears. Instead, this small human was insulting him. "Increase the intensity," he ordered his technicians. In the observation deck, several council members began to object. This was going beyond a trial. But the Vrix had powerful allies, and they invoked obscure regulations about autonomous cultural events. The objections were overruled. Nar. I was crying now, her face pressed against the window. "Please, someone stop this. She is dying down there." But no one stopped it. The third phase was the worst. Vex Thrall activated devices that sent electrical currents through the platform. They were not strong enough to kill, but they were strong enough to cause agony. Yuna's body convulsed against the restraints. She could not stop the scream that tore from her throat. Vex Thrall began broadcasting the trial across the galaxy. He wanted everyone to see the weak human breaking. He wanted to prove that Earth had no place among the advanced civilizations. But even as Una screamed, she did not beg. Even as her body betrayed her, her spirit remained unbroken. She looked directly at the camera Vic's thrall had set up, and through the pain, she smiled. On the Retribution, every human crew member watched in silent fury. They saw their fellow human suffering. They saw the aliens watching and doing nothing. They waited for orders. Jiwan's voice was shaking. "Commander, her organs are failing. Her heart is arrhythmic. She has maybe 10 minutes before irreversible damage occurs." "Can she survive 10 minutes? Taiyang asked. "I do not know," Jiwan admitted. "But even if she does, she will need immediate medical intervention." Taiyang opened a channel to Earth Command. "This is Retribution. The trial has become torture. Requesting permission to intervene." The response came back immediately. "Negative, Retribution. Maintain position. Protocol Fury is active, but not yet initiated. Wait for the trigger." Taiyang wanted to scream. Instead, he watched. The fourth phase introduced a neural disruptor. It created sensations of burning and freezing simultaneously, overloading the nervous system with contradictory signals. Yuna's mind began to fragment. She saw her mother's face. She saw her childhood home. She saw the Earth hanging in space like a blue marble. She saw her father at the window, and she understood. He had warned her. He had tried to protect her. She had been naive to think the Council would enforce fairness. She had been foolish to believe in the goodness of strangers, but she did not regret her choice. Someone had to show the galaxy what humanity was capable of enduring. Someone had to be brave enough to walk into darkness so others could see the light. Her vital signs were failing rapidly now. Jiwan was shouting readings that meant nothing to anyone except that they were all bad. Yuna's heart was struggling. Her lungs were barely functioning. Her brain activity was becoming erratic. Vex Thrall leaned close to her face. "Beg for mercy, Softflesh. Beg, and I will end this." Yuna gathered the last of her strength. She looked directly into his multifaceted eyes and whispered, "You will regret this." Then she looked up at the observation window where her father stood. She could barely see him through the failing sensors in her eyes. But she saw him well enough. She mouthed the words slowly, making sure he could read her lips. "I love you. Make them remember." Her heart stopped at 14:23 station time. The medical monitors went silent. The trial chamber fell quiet. Yuna's body hung limp in the restraints. Her head tilted forward, her eyes closed. Vex Thrall turned to the cameras, his mandibles spread wide in triumph. "The human has failed the trial of worth. Their species is weak, as we declared. They do not deserve their place in the Council." In the observation deck, Ambassador Hyon did not cry. He did not scream. He simply turned away from the window and walked toward the communication center. His face was carved from stone. His eyes were empty of everything except purpose. Nari collapsed. Sobbing, the council members began debating procedures and protocols and what this meant for Earth's status. And on the Retribution, Commander Taiyang received a single word from Earth Command: "Trigger." He opened the full protocol Fury orders and began to read. As he read, his expression changed from grief to something cold and calculating. "All hands," he announced shipwide. "Battle stations. Authorization granted. The 37-minute countdown begins now." Across the galaxy, every human vessel received the same message. Every hidden weapons platform came online. Every sleeper agent activated. Every secret that humanity had been keeping. For 3 years began to surface. The Vrix had killed Yuna too. Prove human weakness. They were about to learn the difference between weakness and patience. The first 5. Minutes after Yuna's death were quiet, deceptively quiet. The council members filed out of the observation deck, some uncomfortable, others indifferent. Vex Thrall was already planning his speech about human inadequacy. The galaxy continued spinning as if nothing important had happened. But in human spaces, everything was happening at precisely 1424 station time. 1 minute after Yuna's heart stopped, every human in the galaxy received a message. It appeared on their personal devices, their ship computers, their neural implants. The message was simple. Protocol Fury active. Stand clear. Authorization. Earth Command, priority absolute. On Harmony 7, Ambassador Hyan walked into the human embassy's secure communication room. The staff there looked at him with expressions of sympathy, ready to offer condolences. He ignored them all and activated the quantum entanglement communicator that provided instantaneous contact with Earth. "This is Ambassador Hyan," he said. "Confirm receipt of situation report." The response came from Admiral Dalyun himself, Supreme Commander of Earth's military forces. "Confirmed, Ambassador. We have monitored everything. Protocol Fury is active. You have command authority for the diplomatic front." "Understood," Hyan said. His voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly. "They killed my daughter. They killed her while the council watched. They need to understand what they have done." "They will," Do-Yun promised. "In 32 minutes, they will understand completely." Across the galaxy, humanity's true capabilities began to reveal themselves. For 3 years, Earth had played the role of the weak newcomer. They had shown the Council outdated technology. They had pretended to struggle with faster-than-light travel. They had acted impressed by weapons and defenses that human engineers had surpassed. Decades ago, it had all been an act. At 1426. 2 minutes into the countdown, the first revelation occurred. A massive cargo hauler near the Vrix homeworld suddenly dropped its camouflage. Where there had been a slow, unarmed transport ship, there was now a warship bristling with weapons. Its hull was covered in armor that scanner analysis showed was more advanced than anything the Council had seen. Then another cargo ship dropped its camouflage. And another. And another got, in 50 different systems, hundreds of human vessels revealed themselves. They had been hiding in plain sight for years, disguised as merchants and explorers. Now they showed their true nature. The Vrix military command began receiving reports. Their communications officers could not believe what the sensors were telling them. Humans were not supposed to have this kind of technology. Humans were primitive. At 1428, 4 minutes into the countdown, Ambassador Hyan returned to the council chamber. He did not ask permission to speak. He simply walked to the center of the floor and began talking. "You wanted to see what humans are made of," he said quietly. Every translator in the room carried his words to every species present. "My daughter showed you courage. She showed you dignity. She showed you that we do not break easily." The council arbiter started to respond, but Hyan cut him off. "She showed you mercy and hope, and you repaid her with torture and death." His voice grew harder. "Now you will see the other side of humanity. Now you will see what we become when mercy is answered with cruelty." Looked at their own capabilities and realized they were generations behind humanity. The peaceful Dalthri felt both horrified and protected by the same force. At 1515. 15 minutes after the strikes began, Siajan activated a galactic broadcast. It reached every inhabited system, every ship, every station. The message was simple and devastating. "People of the galaxy, this is humanity speaking. For 3 years we have lived among you, learning your ways, respecting your laws, seeking friendship. Today, one of our own was murdered under the pretense of a trial, while your leaders watched and did nothing. Images of Yuna's torture played across 1 billion screens. The galaxy saw her suffering. They saw her courage. They saw her die while the Council debated protocol. "We did not come to your world seeking war," Siajon continued. "We came seeking peace. But we prepared for the possibility that peace would not be enough. We hoped we were wrong. The Vrix proved we were right. More images appeared. Human ships that had been disguised as simple transports. Weapon systems far beyond Council technology. The vast fleet that had been built in secret. The quantum tracking devices that had been placed on every world. "We want you to understand something important," Siajon said. "Every capability you are seeing now, we have had for years. We could have attacked at any time. We could have taken what we wanted by force. We chose not to. We chose diplomacy. We chose patience. We chose to give peace a chance." The images shifted to Vex Thrill's palace, now under human control, to the arrested officials being held in comfortable but secure facilities, to Vrix military ships sitting powerless in space. The Vrix taught us that patience has limits. They taught us that some species only understand strength. Very well. Let this be a lesson to everyone. Humanity extends every courtesy, every chance for peace. But cross the line, and we will remind you why our history is written in the ashes of tyrants. At 1530, the Vrix central government sued for peace. They had no choice. Their military was neutralized, their leadership was captured, and humanity had demonstrated the ability to strike anywhere at any time. The peace offer came with an acknowledgement of guilt and a request for terms. Ambassador Hyan presented the terms publicly, in the council chamber where everyone could see them. First, Vex Thrall and all those who participated in Yuna's murder will stand trial. Not in a Vrix court, not in a council court, in a human court where they will face human justice. Vex Thrall began to protest, but Minji simply muted his translator. He clicked and hissed uselessly while Hyan continued. Second, the Vrix military will undergo complete disarmament. You will retain defensive capabilities appropriate for system security, but your ability to wage aggressive war will be dismantled. This process will be monitored by human observers. Council members began to object. This was unprecedented. This was a violation of sovereignty. But Hyan's expression silenced them. Third, reparations will be paid. Not to Earth's government. To a fund that will support peaceful scientific research throughout the galaxy. The fund will be named for my daughter, and it will promote the values she died believing in. At 16 o'clock, 90 minutes after Yuna's death, Vex Thrall was transported to a human ship for trial. The trial was broadcast live, just as he had broadcast Yuna's torture. But there was no torture in the human trial. There was simply evidence. Hour after hour, human prosecutors presented data. Medical scans showing Yuna's suffering. Chemical analysis of the toxins used. Testimony from witnesses. The trial protocols that had been deliberately vague to allow cruelty. Vex Thrall was given every opportunity to defend himself. He was provided with legal representation. His rights were explained in detail. He received everything that Yuna had been denied. The trial lasted 3 days. At the end, Vex Thrall was found guilty of murder, torture, and crimes against a sentient being. His sentence was life imprisonment on a human-run facility, where he would live in conditions that were humane, but allowed him no contact with his own species. "You will live a long life," the human judge told him. "You will have food, shelter, medical care, and safety. Everything my species believes every being deserves. You will have time to think about what you did and why it was wrong. And you will never forget the human you tried to break." Back on Harmony 7, the Council was in emergency session. Some species demanded that humanity be expelled for their aggressive actions. Others pointed out that humanity had responded to murder, not committed it. The debate raged for days. Finally, the Dalthari ambassador spoke. His voice was quiet, but in the silence of the chamber, everyone heard. "I think we are asking the wrong question," he said. "We are asking whether humanity's response was appropriate. We should be asking why it was necessary. We watched a young woman die. We hid behind protocol and cultural relativism. We failed to act when action was needed." He looked around the chamber. Humanity did not fail. We did. They showed us what we have become. Comfortable, complacent, willing to watch evil happen as long as it follows proper procedures. Perhaps we needed this lesson. Other species began to agree. The tide of opinion shifted. Instead of expelling humanity, the Council began to reform itself. New protocols were written. New protections were established. The phrase cultural practices could no longer be used to excuse cruelty. At 18 o'clock, 4 hours after Yuna's death, Minji released her control over the galaxy's systems. Communications were restored. Ships could move freely again. The quantum tracking devices went dormant, though everyone knew they were still there. "We are stepping back," Minji announced. "We have made our point. We do not wish to rule the galaxy. We wish only to live in it safely. But now you know what happens if that safety is threatened." Admiral Do-Yoon's fleet began to withdraw from combat positions. The ships did not leave the galaxy, but they moved to defensive stations. The message was clear. We are watching. We are ready. Do not test us again. In the human embassy on Harmony 7, Ambassador Hyan stood alone in Yuna's quarters. Her belongings were still scattered around the room. A half-finished research paper on xenobiology sat on her desk. A photo of her mother smiled from the wall. Nari found him there, staring at nothing. "We won," she said quietly. "The Vrix are defeated. The Council is reforming." Yuna's death meant something. Hyan did not look at her. "My daughter is still dead. No amount of military victory changes that." "No," Nari agreed. "But she did not die in vain. The galaxy is changing because of her. Because of what she endured. Because of what you did in her name." Hyan finally turned. His eyes were dry but hollow. "I would trade it all to have her back. Every ship, every victory, every change in the Council. I would give it all away for one more conversation with my daughter." "I know," Nari said, "but you cannot. So instead, you made sure her death would never be repeated. You made sure the galaxy remembers. That is what a father does." Outside the window, human ships patrolled alongside vessels from other species. The galaxy was different now. Humanity had proven they belonged, but they had paid a terrible price for that proof. The lesson was learned. Humanity was not weak. They were patient. And when patience ended, they were unstoppable. The reckoning had come, and the galaxy would never forget it. 1 year had passed since Yuna's death. The galaxy looked different now, felt different. The changes were both visible and invisible, structural and cultural. Harmony 7 had been rebuilt and renamed. It was now called Unity Station, a symbol of what the Council hoped to become. In the place where Yuna had died, there stood a memorial. It was simple, a statue of a young woman with her arms outstretched, welcoming the universe. At the base were words in every known language. She believed in peace. Her death taught us justice. May we never forget the difference. Thousands of beings visited the memorial every day. They came from species that had never heard of Earth before the trial. They came from worlds that had opposed humanity's inclusion in the Council. They came because Yuna's story had spread across the galaxy, and with it, an understanding of what humanity represented. Ambassador Hyan no longer held that title. He had been appointed as Earth's Supreme Counselor, the highest diplomatic position humanity had created. He spent most of his time on Earth now, coordinating with other worlds and species. But once a month, he returned to Unity Station to visit the memorial. Today was one of those days. He stood before the statue of his daughter, and he was not alone. Hundreds of others stood with him in silent remembrance. Some were human. Many were not. A young Vrix approached him carefully. The Vrix had changed dramatically in the past year. Their aggressive culture had been shaken to its core by the events of the trial and the human response. This young one wore the simple robes of a student. "Supreme Counselor," the young Vrix said through a translator. "May I speak with you?" Hyan nodded. He had learned to judge Vrix individuals by their actions, not by their species. This one's body language showed genuine respect. "My name is Kix Raw," the student said. "I am studying xenobiology at the new Unity Academy. I am using your daughter's research as the foundation of my thesis." Hyan felt something shift in his chest. "Her research? I thought it was incomplete." "It was," Kixral said. "But what she completed changed everything we knew about interspecies cooperation. She proved that biology is not destiny. That species with completely different evolutionary paths can learn to understand each other if they choose to try." The young Vrix gestured to the memorial. "I never met her, but I study her work every day. I am trying to finish what she started, to prove that my species can be more than what we were." Hyan looked at this young being, this representative of the species that had killed his daughter, and he felt something he had not expected: hope. "She would have liked that," he said quietly. "She always believed people could change, even when I did not." Across Unity Station, in what had once been the council chamber, a very different meeting was taking place. The new council had been restructured completely. Every species still had representation, but there were new rules, new protections, and new accountability measures. JUNHO, the new human representative, stood at the podium. He was young, only 30, but he had earned his position through years of diplomatic service. He had been Yuna's colleague before her death. "The proposal before us," Junho said, "is to establish a joint security force. This force would be multi-species, with representatives from every council member. Its purpose would be to prevent exactly the kind of tragedy that brought us to this point." The Kryn representative, a massive warrior with scales like armor, spoke next. "And who would command this force? Humanity has proven their military superiority. Will we simply be handing them control of galactic security?" Junho shook his head. "Command would rotate annually between species. Humanity would have no more authority than any other member. We propose this not to dominate, but to protect. All of us." The Dalthri ambassador, the same one who had spoken for humanity a year ago, added his support. "I have seen the human military firsthand. I have also seen their restraint. They could have destroyed the Vrix. They chose precision instead. They could have ruled the council. They chose partnership. I trust them." The vote was close, but it passed. The Joint Security Force would become reality. Humanity would contribute ships and personnel, but so would every other species. It would be the first truly cooperative military force the galaxy had ever seen. On the Vrix homeworld, change was even more dramatic. The planet that had once gloried in military conquest was now focused on rebuilding. Human advisors worked alongside Vrix citizens to create new social structures, new educational systems, new ways of thinking about strength and worth. Hana, a human commander who had fought in the 37 Minutes War, now ran a peacekeeping operation on the Vrix capital. She walked through streets that had once been hostile territory, now filled with markets and schools. Children of multiple species played together in parks that had been military training grounds. A group of Vrix elders approached her. They moved slowly, their chitin dulled with age. The eldest spoke. "Commander Hana, we wish to ask you something." Why did your kind show us mercy? We killed one of your own. We would have understood if you had destroyed us completely. Hannah considered the question. She had been asked it many times in the past year by many different species. Because Yuna believed in redemption, she finally said. She died believing that different species could learn to coexist. If we had destroyed you, we would have proven her wrong. By helping you change, we prove her right. We honor her memory with justice, not genocide. The elder's mandibles clicked softly. We do not deserve such mercy. Maybe not, Hannah agreed. But you can earn it. By becoming better. By teaching your children different values. By never forgetting what happened and why it can never happen again. She pointed to a school nearby where young Ricks were learning alongside human children. That is how you earn it. By raising a generation that would never do what yours did. Back on Earth, in the capital city of Geneva, a new building had been constructed. It was the headquarters of the Yuna Memorial Foundation, funded by the reparations from the Vricks and donations from species across the galaxy. The foundation supported scientific research, cultural exchange programs, and educational initiatives. Nari ran the foundation. She had left her diplomatic career to dedicate herself to continuing Yuna's work. Today, she was reviewing applications for research grants. Scientists from 100 species had submitted proposals, all focused on peaceful cooperation and understanding. One proposal caught her eye. It was from a mixed team of humans and Vricks, studying communication barriers between species with fundamentally different sensory systems. The lead researcher was Kixral, the young Vricks who had approached Ambassador Hyon at the Memorial.NAR. I approved the grant immediately. Then she sat back in her chair and looked at the photo of Yuna on her desk. You would have loved this, she said to the image. All these species working together, learning from each other. It is everything you believed in. The photo did not answer, but Nari felt like Yuna was there somehow, watching and approving. On Unity Station. In the Reformed Council chamber, a session was underway. The topic was trade agreements, boring and technical. But the way the discussion happened was revolutionary. Species that had barely spoken to each other a year ago were now negotiating as equals. Arguments were settled with data and compromise, not threats. JUNHO watched it all with satisfaction. This was what government should be. This was what Yuna had died, hoping to see. After the session, the Kreen representative approached him. The massive warrior extended a clawed hand in the human gesture of greeting. I opposed your kind when you first joined the council, the Kreen said. I thought you were weak, soft. I was wrong. You are the strongest species I have ever encountered. Not because of your weapons, but because of your principles. Junho shook the offered hand. We are not strong. We are just unwilling to compromise on certain things. Life has value. Justice matters. Peace is worth fighting for. That is what makes you strong, the Kryn said. Across the galaxy, humanity's ships patrolled the trade routes and borders. They were no longer disguised as simple transports. Everyone knew what they were, what they could do. But that knowledge brought comfort rather than fear. The human fleet had become the galaxy's protectors, not its conquerors. On the bridge of the HSS Retribution, Commander Taiyang reviewed patrol reports. His ship had been upgraded with even more advanced technology in the past year. Earth had stopped hiding its capabilities. There was no need anymore. His first officer approached. Commander, we are receiving a distress signal from the Outer Rim. A colony is under attack by raiders. Set course immediately, Taiyang ordered. Maximum speed. And send the coordinates to the nearest Kryn and Dalthari vessels. This is a joint security force matter now. Within minutes, ships from 3 different species were converging on the threatened colony. They arrived to find the raiders already fleeing. Just the sight of the multi-species force had been enough to scare them off. This was the new galaxy, united, stronger together than apart. On Earth, in his private residence, Ambassador Hyan sat with his wife. They looked through old photos of Yuna, baby pictures, school photos, her graduation from the xenobiology program. A life cut short, but a life that had meant something. "Do you think she knows?" his wife asked. "What her death accomplished?" "I do not know if the dead can know anything," Hyan said. "But if she can see us, I hope she is proud. I hope she sees that her belief in peace was not naive. It was aspirational, and we are trying to live up to it." His wife leaned against him. "You did what a father should do. You made sure her death had meaning." "I did what any human would do," Hyan corrected. "I made them remember. I made them understand that there are lines you do not cross. And I made sure the galaxy would be safer for the next young person who believes in bringing species together." 1 year after Yuna's death, a ceremony was held at the memorial. Representatives from every council species attended. They came to remember, to honor, and to recommit themselves to the principles she had died for. Unho gave a speech. He talked about Yuna's research, her dreams, her courage. He talked about how her death had been a tragedy, but also a turning point. He talked about the galaxy she had hoped to see, and the galaxy that was slowly becoming real. Yuna believed that different species could coexist peacefully, Juno said. She died because others did not share that belief. But her death proved something important. It proved that humanity will fight for peace. We will defend the defenseless. We will seek justice for the wronged. And we will never, ever forget those we have lost. He gestured to the ships, visible through the station windows. Human vessels flying alongside Kryn warships, Dalthri explorers, and even reformed Vrix defense craft. This is her legacy. Not the war that followed her death, but the peace that came from it. This is what she would have wanted. And this is what we will maintain, in her name and in the name of every being who believes that different does not mean enemy. The crowd was silent for a moment. Then, slowly, beings from 100 species began to applaud. It was a human custom, but it had spread throughout the galaxy in the past year. It was a way to show approval, respect, and agreement that the applause continued for 5 minutes. When it finally stopped, every being in attendance placed a hand, claw, tentacle, or appendage over their hearts. Another human custom, adapted by the galaxy. A sign of sincere feeling. That night, as the ceremony ended, Ambassador Hyan stood alone at the memorial one last time. He placed his hand on the statue's base and spoke quietly. "I miss you every day, Yuna.